This is more of what I assumed you were promising me when you told me that Muktu would deal with planetary issues on a global scale. So, can we begin our look at our human politics by my asking you what may seem like an elementary question? No questions are undeserving or unworthy. Questions are like people. Oh, good one. Okay, then, let me ask. Is it wrong to undertake a foreign policy based on your country's own vested interests? No. First, from my standpoint, nothing is wrong. But I understand how you use the term, so I will speak within the context of your vocabulary. I'll use the term wrong to mean that which is not serving you, given who and what you choose to be. This is how I've always used the term right and wrong with you. It is always within this context, for in truth, there is no right and wrong. So, within that context, no, it is not wrong to base foreign policy decisions on vested interest considerations. What is wrong is to pretend that you're not doing so. This is most countries do. Of course, they take action or fail to take action for one set of reasons, then give as a rationale another set of reasons. Why? Why do countries do that? Because governments know that if people understood the real reasons for most foreign policy decisions, the people would not support them. This is true of governments everywhere. There are very few governments which do not deliberately mislead their people. Deception is part of governments. For few people would choose to be governed the way they are governed. Few would choose to be governed at all, unless government convinced them that its decisions were for their own good. This is a hard convincing for most people, because plainly they see the foolishness in government. So government must lie to at least try to hold people's loyalty. Government is a perfect portrayer of the accuracy of the action. That if you lie big enough, long enough, the lie becomes the truth. People in power must never let the public know how they came to power, nor all that they've done and are willing to do to stay there. Truth and politics do not and cannot mix, because politics is the art of saying only what needs to be said, and saying it in just the right way in order to achieve a desired end. Not all politics are bad, but the art of politics is a practical art. It recognizes with great candor the psychology of most people. It simply notices that most people operate out of self interest. So, politics is the way that people of power seek to convince you that their self interest is your own. Governments understand self interest. That is why governments are very good at designing programs which give things to people. Originally, governments had very limited functions. Their purpose was simply to preserve and protect. Then someone added provide. When governments began to be the people's provider as well as the people's protector, government started creating society rather than preserving it. But aren't governments simply doing what the people want? Don't governments merely provide the mechanism through which the people provide for themselves on a societal scale? For instance, in America, we place a very high value on the dignity of human life, individual freedom, the importance of opportunity, the sanctity of children. So, we've made laws and asked government to create programs to provide income for the elderly so they can retain their dignity past their earning years, to ensure equal employment and housing opportunities for all people, even those who are different from us, or with whose lifestyle we don't agree, to guarantee through child labor laws that a nation's children don't become a nation's slaves, and that no family with children go those without the basics of a life with dignity: food, clothing, shelter. Such laws reflect well upon your society. Yet, in providing for people's needs, you must be careful not to rob them of their greatest dignity: the exercise of personal power, individual creativity, and the single minded ingenuity which allows people to notice that they can provide for themselves. It is a delicate balance which must be struck. You people seem to know only how to go from one extreme to the other. Either you want government to do it all for the people, or you want to kill all government programs and erase all government laws tomorrow. Yes, and the problem is that there are so many who can provide for themselves in a society which gives the best life opportunities routinely to those holding the right intentions, or perhaps not holding the wrong ones, who can provide for themselves in a nation where landlords won't rent large families, companies won't promote women, justice is too often a product of status, access to preventive health care is limited to those with sufficient income, and where many other discriminations and inequalities exist on a massive scale. Governments, then, must replace the conscience of the people? No, governments are the people's conscience, outspoken. It is through governments that people seek, hope, and determine to correct the ills of society. That is well said. Yet I repeat, you must take care not to smother yourself in laws trying to guarantee people a chance to breathe. You cannot legislate morality. You cannot mandate equality. What is needed is a shift of collective consciousness, not an enforcer of collective conscience. Behavior and laws and all government programs must spring from beingness, must be a true reflection of who you are. The laws of our society do reflect who we are. They say to everyone, this is how it is here in America. This is how, and this is who Americans are. In the best of cases, perhaps, but more often than not, your laws are the announcements of what those in power think you should be but are not. The elitist few instruct the ignorant many through the law. Precisely. What's wrong with that? If there are a few of the brightest and best among us willing to look at the problems of society, of the world, and propose solutions, does that not serve the many? It depends on the motives of those few, on their clarity. Generally, nothing serves the many more than letting them govern themselves. Anarchy, it's never worked. You cannot grow and become great when you are constantly being told what to do by the government. It could be argued that government by that, I mean the law by which we've chosen to govern ourselves, is a reflection of our society's greatness, or lack thereof. That great societies pass great laws, and very often of them, for in great societies, very few laws are necessary. Still, truly lawless societies are primitive societies where might is right. Laws are the man's attempt to level the playing field, to ensure that what is truly right will prevail, weakness or strength notwithstanding. Without codes of behavior upon which we mutually agree, how could we coexist? I am not suggesting a world with no codes of behavior, no agreements. I am suggesting that your agreements and codes be based on a higher understanding and a grander definition is what the most powerful among you have as a vested interest. Let's just look at one example: smoking. Now, the law says you cannot grow and use a certain kind of plant, hemp, because so government tells you it's not good for you. Yet the same government says it is alright to grow and use another kind of plant, tobacco, not because it is good for you. Indeed, the government itself says it's bad, but presumably because you've always done so. The real reason that the first plant is outlawed and the second is not has nothing to do with health. It has to do with economics, and that is to say, power. Your laws, therefore, do not reflect what your society thinks of itself and wishes to be. Your laws reflect where the power is. Not there. You picked a situation where the contradictions are apparent. Most situations are not like that. On the contrary, most are. Then what is the solution? To have as few laws, which are really limits, as possible. The first reason, the first weed is outlawed. It's only ostensibly about health. The truth is, the first weed is no more addictive and no more a health risk than cigarettes or alcohol, both of which are protected by the law. Why is it then not allowed? Because if it were grown, half of the cotton growers, nylon and rayon manufacturers, and timber products, people in the world would go out of business. Hemp happens to be one of the most useful, strongest, toughest, longest lasting materials on your planet. You cannot produce a better fiber for clothes, a stronger substance for ropes, an easier to grow and harvest source for pulp. You cut down hundreds of thousands of trees per year to give yourself Sunday papers so that you can read about the decimation of the world's forest. Hemp could provide you with millions of Sunday papers without cutting down one tree. Indeed, it could substitute for so many resource materials at one-tenth the cost. And that is the catch. Somebody loses money if this miraculous plant, which also has extraordinary medicinal properties, incidentally, is allowed to be grown. And that is why marijuana is illegal in your country. It is the same reason you have taken so long to mass produce electric cars, provide affordable, sensitive health care, or use solar heat and solar power in every home. You've had the wherewithal and the technology to produce all of these things for years. Why then do you not have them? Look to see who would lose money if you did. There you will find your answer. This is the great society of which you are so proud. Your great society has to be dragged, kicking and screaming, to consider the common good. Whenever common good or collective good is mentioned, everyone yells communism in your society. If providing for the good of the many does not produce a huge profit for someone, the good of the many is more often than not ignored. This is not only true in your country, but also around the world. The basic question facing humankind, therefore, is: can self-interest ever be replaced by the best interests, the common interests of humankind? If so, how? In the United States, you have tried to provide for the common interest. miserable failure. The fact that your babies are dying at a higher rate than most other industrialized nations in the world should bother you. It does not. That says volumes about where your priorities are as a society. Other countries provide for the sick and needy, the elderly and infirm. You provide for the rich and wealthy, the influential and the well placed. 85% of retired Americans live in poverty. Many of these older Americans, and most people low income, use the local hospital emergency room as their family doctor, seeking medical treatment under only the most dire of circumstances, and receiving virtually no preventive health maintenance care at all. There is no profit, you see, in people who have little to spend. They've worn out of their usefulness, and this is your great society. You make things sound pretty bad, yet America has done more for the underprivileged and the unfortunate, both here and abroad, than any other nation on earth. America has done much that is observably true. Yet, do you know that as a percentage of its gross national product, the United States provides proportionately less for foreign aid than many much smaller countries? The point is that before you allow yourself to become too self-congratulatory, perhaps you should look at the world around you. For this is the best your world can do for the less fortunate. You all have much to learn. You live in a wasteful, decadent society. You've built into virtually everything you make what your engineers call bland obsolescence. Cars cost 3 times as much and last a third as long. Clothes fall apart after the 10th wearing. You put chemicals in your food so they can stay on the shelf longer, even if it means your stay on the planet is shorter. You support, encourage, and enable sports teams to pay obscene salaries for ridiculous efforts, while teachers, ministers, and researchers fighting to find a cure for the diseases which kill you to go begging for money. You throw away more food each day in your nation's supermarkets, restaurants, and homes than it would take to feed half the world. Yet, this is not an incident, merely an observation, and not of the United States alone, for the attitudes that sicken the heart are epidemic around the world. The underprivileged everywhere must grovel and scrimp to merely stay alive, while the few in power protect and increase great hoards of cash, lie on sheets of silk, and each morning twist bathroom fixtures made of gold. And as emaciated children of ribs and skin die in the arms of weeping mothers, their country's leaders engage in political corruptions which keep donated foodstuffs from reaching the starving masses. No one seems to have the power to alter these conditions. Yet the truth is, the power is not the problem. No one seems to have the will. And thus, it will always be, so long as no one sees another's plight as his own. Well, why don't we? How can we see these atrocities daily and allow them to continue? Because you do not care. It is a lack of caring. The entire planet faces a crisis of consciousness. You must decide whether you simply care for each other. It seems such a pathetic question to ask. Why can't we love the members of our own family? You do love the members of your own family. You simply have a very limited view of who your are not your own. How can peoples of the earth change their worldview? That depends on what you want to change it to. How can we eliminate more of the pain, more of the suffering? By eliminating all separations between you, by constructing a new model of the world, by holding it within the framework of a new ideal, which is going to be a radical departure from the present worldview. Presently, you see the world, we're speaking geopolitically now, as a collection of nation states, each sovereign, separate and independent of each other. The internal problems of these independent nation states are, by and large, not considered the problems of the group as a whole, unless and until they affect the group as a whole, or the most powerful members of that group. The group as a whole reacts to the conditions and problems of individual states based on the vested interest of the larger group. If no one in the larger group has anything to lose, conditions in an individual state could go to hell, and no one would much care. Thousands can starve to death each year. Hundreds can die in civil war. Despots can pillage the country. Dictators and their armed thugs can rape, plunder, and murder. Regimes can strip the people of basic human rights, and the rest of you will do nothing. It is, you say, an internal problem. But when your interests are threatened there, when your investments, your security, your quality of life is on the line, you rally your nation and try to rally your world behind you and rush in where angels fear to tread. You then tell the big lie, claiming you are doing what you're doing for humanitarian reasons, to help the oppressed peoples of the world, when the truth is you are simply protecting your own interests. The proof of this is that where you do not have interests, you do not have concern. The world's political machinery operates on self-interest. What else is new? Something will have to be new if you wish your world to change. You must begin to see someone else's interest as your own. This will happen only when you reconstruct your global reality and govern yourselves accordingly. Are you talking about a one world government? I am.